I'm just waiting for confirmation.
Is everybody here, do you think?
Everyone is in attendance, Chair, and we're now live.
Okay. Right, thank everybody for their attendance tonight. And just item number one, the usual thing. The meeting has been live streamed and recorded for future publication on the council's website. Please can I ask you to turn off your mobile phone, can I ask you if your mobile phone is turned off or to silent for the duration of the meeting. That would be great help. Item number 2, apologies. Have we got any apologies?
Councillor Rudkin and Councillor Gran. So Councillor Rudkin is being substituted by Councillor Phillips and Councillor Gran is being substituted by Councillor Pandare.
Okay, we recognise him. Okay, thank you. Minutes of the 12th of November, 17th continuation and the 21st of January. Any comments? I can see no hands up, so I shall pass on to item number 4 then. Declarations of interest. Any members of any declarations of interest, apart from the ones that we already know about? Councillor Sargent?
Yeah. I volunteer for Carver at the minute, so it's not, I don't think it impacts on anything that's in the report, and you know, but I am volunteering there at the minute.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Tandy?
Tandy, you're muted.
Sorry.
Try now.
I am a member of the, as recorded, as a partnership member of the Hilltop and Caldwell Big Local organisation, but there is nothing in the report that affects me in this on that particular item, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Elliott.
Thanks, Chair. It's not a new interest, but at the risk of repeating myself, is it possible to change ASD to autism? I have asked before. I think it's quite important. We don't use the term ASD anymore. So if that could just be changed like that, just as a matter of public record, I do keep asking for it to be changed. Thank you.
Can we make sure that happens in the future, please? Yeah.
Yeah, that's noted, Chair.
Okay. Item number 5, public consultation. I understand there's no one. So move on to item number 6. Questions referred by the full council. Referred to the full council. You've seen that in front of you. Any comments? Nope. Okay, we've gone to
Councillor
item
Evans has his hand up, Chair.
I have never. I see it now. Yeah, Councillor Evans.
Yes, thank you very much, Chair. I think first of all, actually, a credit where due to Councillor Tandy, who voted to enable this to come from full council to this panel for further scrutiny. I think the question that was raised by Mrs. Brown is actually a very important question. You may remember 2 years ago that the council adopted a budget. That was a decision taken by full council to implement changes at the Civic Hall Bistro, and after the budget was adopted, a petition was received, and as a result of that petition, certain officers decided to override a decision of full change the offering at the Civic Hall Bistro. And I think 2 questions need to come from that. First of all, we need to ascertain whether the petition that was submitted in accordance with the council's petitions scheme. And I say that because online petitions are not valid and I don't agree with that. I think they should be valid, but as things stand, the controlling group has refused to change the petition scheme, so we cannot accept online petitions, only paper petition that was submitted to the council was in accordance with the council's petition scheme. And if it is the case that it got for, we then need to ask was not forward to councillors should be with the recommendations on the petition. And then, of course, you come on to the other issue that full council in its own right has decided to make a decision, and that decision was to approve the budget. And if you want to amend a budget halfway into a financial year, you have to present that amendment to a meeting of full council. And in this case, there was no amendments whatsoever put forward to not even full council, but to cabinet. No, there was no information presented to this committee. So in light of the concerns that I think members will have about this, I wish to move the following recommendation under this item, and that is that this panel requests that the senior management team prepare a report outlining why the council's management decided to override a decision made by full council without consulting councillors. The said report be presented to a meeting of full council, given this was the body which approved the budget that was overridden. And I've just put that into the group chat thing for you, Chair, for you to peruse. So I formally move that recommendation.
Does that find a seconder?
No,
Seconded.
Councillor Croft.
Who seconded that? Sorry, there was a couple chipped in at the same time. Sorry. Who seconded that?
Can I raise a point of order, Chair, please? I will put it into the chat. The question, as we have written, that was referred to full council, from full council, was in relation to the, and I will read the question as it's written. Councillor Lloyd has answered a question concerning a petition in relation to the bistro at the Civic Hall, Bedworth. Councillor Lloyd, in his answer to that question, confirmed that a valid paper petition had been received. I would like to know how many signatures the paper petition in question contained. I don't see the relevance of Councillor Evans' proposal in relation to the printed question, Chair.
Can I just clarify one point? Did we have a seconder for the formerly Councillor Croft? Anybody else would like to say anything on the matter? Kevin, you've got your name up. Your hand up, I should say, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. Just for clarity, and to follow on from the reference that Councillor Tandy made, it's that the petition was signed by 415 signatures, and it was just really to reaffirm what Councillor Tandy said, that it was a valid paper petition that was received. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. So we have the.
Sorry, Chair. I've got my hand, if you can see it.
I haven't. Sorry, Councillor Condicart. Yeah, I've got it now. Yeah, go on.
Thank you. We also had an audit and standards meeting this week, which is also going to have a look at the issue of the Civic Halls. So I don't see why we're duplicating stuff. Surely the Audit and Standards Committee, which was going to get the internal auditor to have a look at the Civic Hall, is doing this already. So I think doing something separate as a parallel stream is duplicating work. And if Councillor Evans is unhappy, he can ask the external auditors to have a look at it as well. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thanks for your input. Anybody else would like to say anything? Is there anybody else? Councillor Evans.
Thank you. Yes, I think this is absolutely relevant. It is our responsibility as councillors to set the council's annual budget. And if officers want to change a budget halfway into a financial year, that's fine. There's reasons why that needs to happen. But actually, it's the right of councillors to be made aware of that change in the budget. If I can highlight Councillor Kandaka's point about internal audit and the recent Audit and Standards Committee, it is the case that at some point in 12 months' time, the council's internal audit officer will be conducting a follow-up review to look at the recommendations that she proposed in her report about 6 months ago to ensure that the Civic Hall are following those points up. Unfortunately, if I recall, it wasn't actually included in that report, so it's not something that she would follow up as part of the internal audit follow-up review. With regards to external audits, in fact, I think I've put it forward now on 2 separate occasions. Unfortunately, the controlling group have decided to vote that down for reasons. I mean, they've got excellent audit, given some of the issues which are arising from the Civic Hall. So yes, I think I understand Councillor Kandaka's point, but unfortunately, I'm not willing to wait 12 months. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Kandaka. Got your hand up
Thank you,
again.
Chair. Yeah, the external auditor, any member of the public who pays council tax can ask the external auditor to look at something in the last year's accounts. So Councillor Evans can quite rightly, at the moment, ask the external auditor to do this, totally freestanding of the council. So this is why external auditors are separate organisations. And if Councillor Evans does have these concerns, which I think may very well be legitimate, it is for him to ask the external auditor to have a look at it, not to go through the council's committee system. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Tandy.
Thank you, Chair. I failed to see how I would like a reply to my point of order, please, because I still fail to see how the recommendation that has been put forward by Councillor Evans has anything whatsoever to do with the question that was referred from full council. And I would like a reply to my point of order, please.
Philip, can you help us out here, please?
Thank you, Chair. Well, it's obviously a matter for you as Chair to decide whether Councillor Evans' motion is valid or not. Obviously, motions have to be relevant to the substance of the report that's before you, and obviously we haven't got a full report here. We've just got the questions, so you'll have to decide whether you think it is sufficiently germane to the issue as to whether to accept it or not. But it is obviously your discretion as Chair whether or not to accept it. Whilst I'm speaking, Chair, if I can just clarify one point, because Councillor Evans did refer to the petition scheme. I just want to advise, because he did make a point, that in the petition scheme, it says ordinary petitions between 25 and 499 signatures will be dealt with by the appropriate service unit at the council. So it wouldn't necessarily come back to members. It may well be discussed with the portfolio holder to members, Chair. I'll just make that point just as I've got the opportunity to say that.
Thank you for that clarification, Peter, then. So the way I see it, it's straightforward. We either accept what's in front of us, what was agreed at full council by Councillor Lloyd. So it's either for the current, I'm just trying to get up here, sorry. The thing from Councillor Evans, is either for or against. Can we have a vote on the matter, please, Philip? Are you taking the votes?
Yes, I can, Chair. So
you.
you're accepting the motion as a valid motion, Chair. Is that what you're saying?
I don't think it's a valid motion. I just thought it was straightforward. Either we voted for it or voted against it. And if we vote against it, that would have nullified the original motion or something like that.
So you're asking me to take the vote on Councillor Evans's motion?
Yeah, either for or against it. If it goes against that, we just refer back to the original comments made from the clarification we've had from the full council meeting.
Thank you, Chair. Well, if members could then please indicate whether they're for and against Councillor Evans's motion. So, Councillor Croft.
For.
Councillor Doughty.
Against.
Councillor Elliott.
Against.
Councillor Evans.
For.
Councillor Glass.
Against.
Councillor Guttridge.
For.
Councillor Hocking.
Against.
Councillor Kandaka.
Abstain.
Councillor Pomfret.
Against.
Councillor Sargent.
For.
Councillor Tandy.
Against. For the
Councillor
reasons I stated.
Councillor Wilson.
For.
Councillor Pandare.
For.
Councillor Phillips. Sorry, Councillor Phillips, you're muted.
Yeah, sorry, I clicked the screen. Against.
Okay, thank you. That's lost, Chair, 6 votes to 7.
Thank you for that. I'll move on to the next item, and it's the voluntary community sector monitoring report for the first quarter and the second quarter 2020 to 2021. Who's dealing with this? Abu?
Yes, Chair. I'll be doing the report, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you very much, Chair. So, yeah, in front of you, hopefully you all had a chance to read the report. What I'll look to do is I'll cover the section on performance report relating to Carver. Unfortunately and thankfully, Bill Basra has joined us, the CAB. So he'll kind of he will do a brief summary on how things have panned out for the CAB and then take any questions from members, as will I, on any aspect of the report.
Thank you.
Okay, so the report kind of covers key performance indicators for that period, Q1 and Q2. Obviously, this was a very kind of unprecedented period, so the information that you have in front of you is a little bit different to what would typically information. Both organisations, they had to very quickly and massively recalibrate their services. So specifically in relation to Warwickshire Carver, you've got the kind of normal information about the groups that they've supported, the kind of funding bids that they've submitted. But I guess the most important and the obvious point to state was all of this was as the pandemic was kind of taking place, and obviously all the kind of challenges were presenting to our communities, etc. So the large amount or the large body of work that Warwickshire Carver was focused on, as is highlighted in the report, is really around supporting communities across Nuneaton and Bedworth with basic support. And then what we had was we had a lot of COVID support groups, so different types of organisations, new, old, existing, who were able to, based on some of their members not shielding, etc., that came to the fore and supported the Borough Council and specifically our team and the other teams that set up the hub at Jubilee, food, medical support and all sorts of emergency assistance. particularly in that kind of first 5 to 6 months. So a lot of that activity focused on kind of getting out donations of PPE, getting out food to organisations, supporting new organisations in our communities that wanted to set up food support programmes. We had a lot of groups that were supporting some of the very extremely vulnerable cohorts amongst our communities. We had then Carver working hugely with other organisations to coordinate volunteering, and specifically some of the new schemes that government was kind of putting forward, and we had how we rolled out locally across the borough. And in that sense, they were a massive partner in a whole host of partnerships that were taking place, but particularly in terms of the work that the Borough Council and the County Council were doing around food and emergency assistance. Carver was integral to a large amount of that work, and under massive amounts of strain, because for a lot of these organisations, their normal funding streams had either disappeared very quickly overnight, and they had to pick up other areas of work, often without knowing if they were going to be funded or not. So from our perspective, a massive thank you for the work that they have done throughout the year, but particularly in that kind of early phase. And that hopefully is echoed in the report. And I'm happy at the end to take any questions or take any questions that members have after the fact. The second part of the report covers the performance with regards to the CAB, and again, some of the points are very important in terms of the work that the CAB had done through that period, and it obviously has continued to do through the kind of second half of the year with us and with a lot of other partners. But what I'll do is, Bill's joined us, so I'll ask Bill just to maybe do a bit of a kind of summary of how they have worked through the pandemic, and then opening up for members to ask any questions and just picking up maybe any of the highlights that Bill thinks is quite pertinent from the performance report as well. Over to you, Bill.
Bill.
Thank you, Abu. Thank you, Chair. So I suppose the first thing I'd say is just to echo Abu's comments that it's certainly been an unusual year. That probably would be and as with a lot of organisations, our first task almost a year ago now was to move from what was a predominantly face-to-face service to one that was delivered by telephone and email. Our service has been delivered by telephone and email by all of our paid staff and approximately half of our volunteers, who've also been working from home in order to answer queries from clients as they've been. The kind of key things for us, certainly during the initial periods, was that actually in terms of data, we found that there was an approximately 26% drop in the number of clients in Q1 who we would ordinarily expect to see. And that didn't come as a surprise, given the quickness with which lockdown occurred, the fact that our major access channel, i.e. the front door, had been closed. What we then found during Q2, so essentially the period from July, August, September, is that there was a slow but significant increase in the number of clients who were accessing our services. And by the end of Q2, what we found is that if you were to compare our performance with the corresponding quarter in 2019, our figures were only down by 8%. And although it's not on the agenda today, Chair, having run the Q3 stats through the wash, we've actually found that we've seen address the needs of more clients in 2020 by telephone and email than we did in 2019. So more clients are accessing us. The demand is increasing. It will not come as a surprise to the committee that our bread and butter continues to be people accessing advice. Approximately 60% of the issues that we deal with or have dealt with over the last year have related to benefits and debt. There's been a slight change in emphasis
in terms of benefits, in that whereas in quote unquote normal years, a significant proportion of the advice that people are seeking relate to disability related benefits, for example, PIP, ESA and so forth. We've seen a significant surge over the last year, and particularly those first 6 months, in relation to first time entrance to the benefit system, particularly around universal credit. We also saw a significant increase in employment related inquiries. In that period of Q1, Q2, the majority of those inquiries related to furlough and questions around some of the new schemes in relation to COVID. More recently, the employment related inquiries have related to redundancy or risk of redundancy and health and safety issues. So, for example, employees who've been asked to is a COVID secure or not. We've also seen a significant number of inquiries related to fuel poverty, which won't come as a surprise given that people have spent more time indoors at home and particularly around homeschooling. So that's kind of been the significant trends, I would say, over Q1, Q2. Just looking forward, and just to give you a kind of taster of where things are at the moment, we would expect issues relating to debt and benefits, if anything, to increase as the year progresses. We've certainly seen a slow upward trajectory in demand over the last 3 or 4 months, and I suppose the challenge for us is meeting that demand, and also as restrictions are lifted, to kind of slowly start opening that front door. What we have found, one of the key lessons for us, is that the telephone and email channels have been very effective, and if anything, we'd want to enhance those channels going forward. But what they've not been a substitute for is dealing with some of the more vulnerable clients. So the lessons learned for us is where the client has got an additional vulnerability, for example, mental health, learning difficulties, English as a second language, or where they're trying to go through a raft of paperwork that requires a caseworker, to sit down and analyse that actually that's where the telephone and email channel has been a bit of a blocker. So as and when it's safe to do so, we're hoping that we can have a limited opening of the doors in order to address the needs of those vulnerable clients over the next 6 months or so. I'm quite happy to answer any questions alongside Abu.
Okay, thanks for that, Bill. Anybody got any questions? One hand up. Councillor Phillips.
Yes, thank you very much, Chair. I just want to place on record my thanks for the work that Carver and the CAB have actually done during this very difficult period, and also obviously to all the volunteers across the borough that have stepped up, especially with the food banks, etc., and the food hub this year, Chair. I just want to make sure that they receive my thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Condicor.
Thank you very much. The third sector has been marvellous during a lot of this. Third sector for the first time in their lives. For the people who've become unemployed and using benefits for the first time, has there been much of a need and much help on people with things like money management? Because a lot of people in well-paid jobs may never have had to manage their budgets very carefully, and also may not be aware of all the ways of either accessing benefits or saving money, or some of the So, has there been sort of an area where we do need to actually help people into the complexities of it? And is there like a signposting to somewhere or some sites where people get a particularly thing like universal credit, a sort of quick thing for those clients to read? Thank you, Chair.
Bill, would you take this? I presume it comes under you, this one.
Yeah, so money management is kind of the other side of the coin in terms of the work that we do in relation to debt and benefits. So where a client has indicated that they may need some budgeting skills, then we provide that as part and parcel of our service. The sheer volume of inquiries has meant that we've incorporated the development of money management modules as a key priority next year within our business plan. And we're hoping to run some budgeting sessions across the borough over 2021. And we've also developed some money. We're developing some money management modules for some of the more vulnerable groups as well. One of which is care leavers. So we're working with the Care Leavers Council to develop money management sessions that are actually targeted towards younger individuals.
Okay. Does that answer your questions, Councillor?
Yeah, that's fine. It's a pity it's going to be next year, but it's good that the work is ongoing.
Okay. I have no other hands up at the current moment. There's saying that I wish to thank everybody for the report, and I know we keep saying about the nurses and people are working and old people's centres and various other places, and by all means, brilliant, absolutely brilliant. We couldn't go through this pandemic without them. But it's nice to know the community coming together, and people that never actually did sort of things that to help other members of the community is refreshing, and we should applaud them as well. And I think, Bill, you've got some problem, not so many problems coming up, but as we come out of this and hope that the vaccine's going to be the answer to come out of this pandemic, well, soon or well, as soon as possible. I think you might have to pick up a couple of 3 extra bits with people coming through your doors rather than people who have got computer skills. So on behalf of the panel, on behalf of the council, I would like to thank you, Abu, and Bill for the report in front of you. And as I say, more power to your elbows. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair.
Right, the next item. Right, my phone's just gone off. It's ground maintenance, I believe. Kevin, you dealing with this?
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to ask David Truslove to present the report with Glendale. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you for that. Just say my phone's gone. You're very quiet, David.
Yeah, is that better, Chair?
Yep.
Okay. Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. Our report on grounds maintenance I'll do in 2 parts. You'll be aware that we've got 3 colleagues from Glendale with us this evening, and they'll be doing a short presentation. If I just take members first briefly through the report itself that I've put together. Obviously, COVID-19 has continued to have a significant impact on grounds maintenance delivery since we last reported to you in mid-November. Obviously, almost immediately following that meeting, we, as a nation, went back into a lockdown period, which we are gradually emerging from, and that has presented a number of challenges to us. Not least within our cemeteries, although I've not referenced them directly in the report, but for the first time in my career, in January we actually started the process of digging some stock graves within Ouston Road just to ensure that we had sufficient capacity to continue to deliver that service. And we've been working very closely with our contractor in delivering that particular aspect of our service. The CRM firm step interface, I've mentioned in the previous report, obviously that was being embedded, and I've updated that in section 7.3 and 7.4, which, if I may, I'll come on to in a moment, just to give members a brief update on that. We talked last time about customer satisfaction ratings, and at the time of the last report, we were testing an online customer feedback survey. That has identified a number of shortcomings in terms of the system, and it wasn't currently suitable in the iteration that we put together. We are now working with customer services and the risk and performance manager officer to look at a wider electronic survey. We're pursuing that at the moment, although we are aware that there are some issues with us being able to access members of the public because of GDPR, and we're working with our colleagues to address that and reintroduce that as soon as we possibly can. Performance monitoring, I've given you the update for the period up to the end of January, which was the latest point I had data for when I prepared the report. You can see that on formal sites, we've continued to run just above 80%. On the informal sites, we mentioned last time, obviously, there's a significantly less operations dealt with on there, and that has an impact on the scoring system. You will note that during December and January, obviously, whilst the actual headline score is only moved up by 1%, the actual scores for each month were above 50%. So we are seeing that improvement, which, as I said, we've been working closely with our colleagues at Glendale to address that and continue to in terms of improving the service that is delivered, but also looking at we've done a considerable amount of work over the winter period in terms of opening up our footways, because a lot of people are using our open spaces, and more than just cutting back so that you can actually use the footpath as it is, but also ensuring that we get ahead so that the regrowth that comes through in early spring, it doesn't lead us to have the paths overgrown again. That in turn has obviously identified some issues with litter, which we have addressed and continue to address on there. The last bit from me before I hand over to, as I say, my colleagues from Glendale. The section 7, where we look at the inquiries, obviously the first two, section 1, section 2, refer to the inquiries between June and October, which really reference back to the figures that we presented in November. 7.3 and 7.4, they deal with the inquiries in the intervening period. Obviously, you can see from that, within a space of just over 3 months, we'd had over 550 inquiries. It gives you a breakdown of where they're coming from, and what we're trying to do with those at the moment is we are trying to look at those in terms of not just what the particular inquiry relates to, whether it be related to litter bins or grass or hedges or such like, but we're also trying to cross-reference that with where it is coming from within the borough, so that we can look at it at a ward level, and that allows us to then target our interventions. One area that members may be interested in, I'll just allude to there, is that one of the columns that you'll see there, it says other, of which there are 222 inquiries. We've done a bit more work on that to break that down, and of those 222, there were actually 98 which we were able to reallocate to one of the other areas, and when we looked into it, it had just not been properly logged. 8 of them should have gone to our cemeteries team, and 7 of them were not related to grounds maintenance or our parks and green spaces. The remaining 109 did not automatically fit into any of those categories, and we've looked up and just we collected a few examples of what those might be. So we may get inquiries relating to allotments, for example. It is one of those. Another one relates to, somebody who was installing some signage adjacent to our site. We even had one from somebody who was flying his drone over one of our parks and managed to park it on the roof of one of our changing rooms and wanted to know if we would give it him back. That gives you a brief overview of where we are in terms of grounds maintenance during the winter period. And if I may, I'll hand over to my colleagues, Mike, Barry and Dean at Glendale to give their presentation.
Mike, Barry or Dean?
Thank you, Chair. Mike Brunskill here. If I take you through the report and excuse me, add a little bit of detail where appropriate, bring my colleagues in on one or two points, and then obviously we will take any questions that may arise. A relatively short duration since the report we produced for the last scrutiny meeting, and this time we've focused on a short review of 2020 and our preparation and plan of 2020, as has been covered already. It's been dominated by COVID, the impact of COVID, which is ongoing, and we certainly look forward to later this year when we can, in respect of our service and the performance, move past having to refer to it. Nevertheless, it still has some bearing on our activities. In terms of COVID itself, to address that and move on, we continue with our rigorous monitoring and compliance with our own Glendale policy, which we shared with colleagues within the council. It is very thorough, and the company provides support and guidance to all our local business units and centres of operations, including, of course, Nuneaton and Bedworth. I'm pleased to report that there has been no substantial service disruption arising from COVID and its impact on our workforce or our management of the service. In actual fact, we have looked at increasing, or we have increased our capacity in order to cope with the impact of that. Weekly testing of all staff, coupled with our robust processes in place to create work bubbles and minimise the impact of any outbreak that might occur within the workforce. And I'm pleased to report that we have had no disruption in respect of that. Currently, where a little over a third of our staff have now been received their first vaccination, and we look forward to that being concluded over the next couple of months. We do still have 2 staff that are shielding, and we hope to welcome them back to work at the end of this month or as soon as it's deemed appropriate. We've included a slide within the report on our COVID policy, which simply gives you the subheadings of our policy as a flavour of the measures that we look at and control through our policy and ensure compliance with. In terms of the wider health and safety of our service, we've undertaken extensive in respect of leading into the season this year and throughout last year as appropriate. That's primarily delivered through toolbox talks, 20-30 minute talks with groups of staff to communicate messages clearly and simply. And that sits within our cultural health and safety campaign, Grow Safe Together. So it's very important that we don't just look at simple statistics and processes, risk assessments and policies. We actually have a campaign built around communicating the importance of cultural safety, people's awareness on a day-to-day, hour-to-hour basis of safety for themselves and their colleagues and the public alike. We've undertaken some additional COTS training, which is training specifically related to undertaking activities within cemeteries to increase our resilience this year. During last year and into this year. And to give you an idea of that, we now have somewhere around 80% of our staff trained to be able to undertake interments and related activities, which is an increase of over 50% from where it was pre-COVID under normal conditions. We manage the health and safety through on-site safety inspections, by supervision and management, all recorded in our cloud-based system, GlenSafe, and available for a review and comment by the officers of the council. And we analyse that data and seek to use it in order to inform areas that we may need to improve upon or address or increase training and instruction. I'm pleased to say that throughout 2020, we had no RIDDOR reportable accidents, so no accidents of a category that required any reporting to the Health and Safety Executive. And we only had 8 minor accidents. That's a substantial improvement year on year, a 43% improvement in terms of reduction in accidents. We continue to promote the culture of generating safety observations through the smartphones by the staff, and there's some data on one of the slides that tells you the kind of statistics we get back. And we carried out more than 130 site safety inspections in the last part of last year and into this year. Performance-wise, it's worth noting that unfortunately we had a 20% increase. 20% of our overall burials and interments were COVID related, which, as David Truslove mentioned, necessitated us excavating stock graves in anticipation of potential requirement. But moving away from that activity, we report that over 95% of our winter works programme is fully completed, and we're now, as I'll come to, in preparation for the summer growing season. There's a stat in terms of schedules completed in 2020. I'm afraid there's a bit of a typo there, and that's my mistake. There are over 155,000 schedules actually completed in 2020, and well over 7,000 photographs evidencing the completion of the work, example of which is on the slide, which again is available to within the Glendale Live system. Within our own monitoring of our own work, we've raised some 2,000 issues, some of which are within our control, some of which are out with our control. And they include things like accumulations of litter, particularly hazardous sharps, or damaged infrastructure, whether that be litter bins or other breaches or similar, which we report through the system. And there's an example illustrated by one of the photographs that unfortunately during the Black Lives Matter campaign surrounding news events, we were able and needed to respond very quickly to some antisocial activity relating to that, which we dealt with as quickly as possible. We're pleased to be working more closely, as David has outlined, with the Firm Step system, and we look forward to building on the progress to date. And there is still opportunity for improvement there in respect of us understanding and being proactive to prevent future similar inquiries arising through the system. Just briefly touching on preparation for this year, as I mentioned, it's well underway. We've now completed the servicing of all our machinery and equipment in anticipation of the commencement of grass cutting. We've added replacement equipment, which is in addition to the £220,000 worth of new equipment we put in last year. We've talked a little bit about recruitment. So replacement equipment has been centred around further increasing our stock of electrically powered handheld equipment. We are endeavouring to be completely electric powered in respect of handheld equipment by next season. We've purchased additional equipment in recognition of some of the challenges of the service through liaising with the council officers, and that would include a sweeping unit that mounts on the front of one of our mowers. It interchanges with the cutting deck, and that enables us to increase our output and efficiency for cleansing of hard surfaces. And that would include the environmental areas, as David touched upon. And we've taken delivery of some new vehicles, including the kinds of vehicles that mean we can use our larger equipment without the need for trailers, which helps to in part resolve the challenge of the difficulty of finding suitable operatives that are trailer qualified. Recruitment, we're well underway now with the recruitment of our fixed term operatives for the growing season. It has been and continues to be a challenge. We undertake campaigns locally and nationally to emphasise the benefits of working in the green space sector, and we go through rigorous recruitment process locally in Nuneaton and Bedworth. But we have to concede it remains a challenge, and it's something that we are working very hard with. We will be prepared and ready for the season as it gets underway in earnest. All our schedules, and a schedule being a task in a certain place at a certain time on Glendale Live, all of that has been reviewed, and we've created, for example, more than 13,000 schedules in March alone for the work required in this month that we are now, just over halfway through. Unfortunately, and it is disappointing but unavoidable, we did have plans last year for community-related events in line with our CSR policy and commitments we've made to the council, and they were substantially disrupted, inevitably. We are planning now ideas and initiatives to undertake community-related projects and similar, and we'll be producing a calendar of those that will, in all likelihood, come into play from around May this year, where we hope to add some value and outreach to the community, undertaking some positive work for the betterment of the green spaces and the people that use them. And that concludes the report, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any members with any questions? We have a hand somewhere, if I can find it. Oh, where is hand? Councillor Condicor.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, I must actually say thank you for Glendale for quite a few things this year. It was really noticeable how they're working in the early days of COVID. They've finally taken the shrubbery on the corner of Ryde Avenue and Brookdale back a long way. So actually, as we were talking about earlier, there was room for growth in the growing season. So in some ways, things are getting a lot better. A couple of issues always are litter and litter bins. During Christmas and holidays, the service just stops at the time when most people are putting litter in litter bins. So can we do something about actually reinforcing rather than stopping the littering service over bank holidays? Secondly, recovering from COVID, obviously if we deep clean the town centre and get people back in, is there a planting plan or something to add extra flowers to both town centres, or time the planting arrangements for town centres to actually welcome people back when it's safe to do so? And finally, trees. I know we do some work through other contractors on trees and things, and some through Glendale. I didn't know what our tree planting plans were for the year, and if they were through Glendale or if we're using another contractor. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, who wishes to answer this question?
If I may, Chair,
Okay.
I'll come back in on those. In reference to litter and litter collection on our sites, obviously, our parks have seen a considerable increase in numbers of people using them, in part as a result of a lockdown, and that people are rediscovering their local parks and are using them for their exercise within the local area. That has brought its own challenges. We have been working to address those. I note the councillor's remarks with regards to the Christmas period, and there was cover over the Christmas period. Unfortunately, there was one of those operatives unfortunately tested positive during the Christmas period, and that required the brief isolation of other members of the team. And that impact as quickly as possible once they'd had their tests and they'd come back negative. We tried to get that back on track as quickly as possible. We are working a 7-day service. Our contractors are available on weekends to deal with those matters. We have run a litter campaign, and we've reiterated that, such that obviously we would ask members of the public to use litter bins where at all possible, and there are options to use other litter bins within the site, and you know, if they are full and we have not been able to get to them, then obviously we would prefer it that they took it home with them rather than leave it on the site itself. The replacement of litter bins is something that we're dealing with within the Parks and Green Space team. We're putting a program together to replace some of our existing stock, which is coming to the end of its life, and we consider additional facilities where practicable and where our budgets permit. In addition to the facilities that we offer, we've also been working quite closely with our colleagues in waste management. They've been particularly in relation to Riversley Park and the Miners Welfare Park. They've been offering us additional facilities in there, which they've been servicing for us. And obviously we're ramping that up now that the weather is beginning to improve, and as we slowly emerge from the current lockdown situation. In relation to the town centre that the councillor touched on, obviously at the beginning of last year, at one point we were considering whether we would have been delivering any bedding schemes at all, let alone within the town centres. And in the end, we largely delivered all of the bedding schemes last year, with the exception of the hanging baskets, which unfortunately we weren't able to achieve at that time. The bedding schemes for this year will go forward as planned, and they will include hanging baskets this year as well. And obviously they're due to change typically around the end of May, beginning of June. So they will be going in to the town centre and to the other areas within the two main parks as the summer season progresses. The final point the councillor referred to was related to trees. Obviously, tree maintenance came out of the grounds maintenance contract when the contract was renewed. That's a contract that's now held separately by another contractor. They carry out the tree maintenance operations, and this year a large proportion of those operations have involved the removal of trees which have reached the end of their useful working life. Replacement tree planting is obviously something that we have an interest in and we want to see going forward. We have to balance that against the budgets that we have available at that time and the current situation. But we remain committed to improving our tree stock as we are able.
Okay, thank you for that.
Can I just
go on then,
follow up?
Cole, so it'll be very quick then. Come on.
Very quick. I just want an idea of how many trees we have planted, because I know we have taken a lot out in the last year, and it is we keep saying we want 2 in for every 1 lost.
Could you find out for that? If you don't
Yeah,
have the
I
facts and figures that
I don't have those numbers with me here, but I will get those numbers and I'll pass them on to Victoria.
Okay, thanks for that, David. Councillor Guttridge.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to first thank Glendale for a Washwood Close. We had a few ups and downs. It was basically a complete renovation because we chopped the trees down and then they found the trees were past their useful time, and they have planted more trees this time, the tree surgeon man has, than before. Also, I must thank it's Dean and Barry. They've replanted the shrubs, and it does, when the grass grows and come the spring, summer, it will look a credit to the borough, and I must thank them very much. I have two other points I'd like to ask them about. Primarily, we have started grass cutting, which I can understand, and it will be a bit tiresome because first cut is always a bit awkward because it's had the winter growth and things like that. I've had one or two complaints where we've got grass on the road and on the path, but a good sweep of the brush afterwards and it would be clear. But one of the complaints I've had in the last 24, 48 hours is about the weed killer that we've put round the trees and the signs and the sides of the path. Can I just ask, is it biodegradable? Does it affect your animals? And why really have we done that? Could they come back? And then I'd like to come back again after they've explained that, please, Chair.
Okay, could somebody answer that, please?
Yeah. I'll pick that up, Chair, if you like, if that's okay with David.
Okay.
Yeah, so in answer to the two very specific questions, the chemical we use is the most commonly used one throughout the whole country and arguably worldwide in terms of its the active ingredient is called glyphosate, and it's the same kind of weed killer that you find, albeit it's a commercial application product, but it's the same kind you would find in your local garden centre, etc. It doesn't present any risk to animals. In terms of the last part of the question, if I understand it, was around how we apply it. Would the councillor elaborate in terms of what he's referring to in that regard? So we could.
Well, you've applied it, and you've applied it round. I understand round. Well, I've seen it round the bottom of the trees, round the curbs, and everything. Why is that done? I think I roughly know why, but I'd like to just have the professionals just to tell me why you've sprayed round the trees and verges and things like that.
Yeah. Sorry. Yes, I do understand now. I mean, in essence, we apply it because it is deemed appropriate under the specification, but that overlooks something else. The alternative to applying weed killer to those locations is the hand trimming of growth around trees and along fence lines, etc. And unfortunately, it does come down to cost, because the manual equivalent, rather than applying pesticide, is orders of magnitude greater in cost. It's very time consuming. We are, as an organisation, looking at alternatives to the common pesticide usage, and we certainly seek to reduce it. And there are some products on the market, one or two of which we've trialled. There's a foam-based application for hard surfaces, in particular, or the edges of hard surfaces. And they are effective in certain circumstances, but not as widely effective as the current technique. And so we continue to monitor it and seek to reduce it wherever possible.
Councillor Guttridge.
Thank you. I fully understand that. My background is from farming, and we obviously spray around the edge of the fields to stop the weeds growing into the crop, so you can cut the crop easier, which is indirectly the same as what you're doing around the trees, I believe.
Indeed.
But I'd just like to say thank you for what you've done for us. We did have a bit of a slight hiccup during the Christmas period with the bins, with the dog bins collecting, but we have unprecedented times, and we've had, I counted the other day walking down the road from me, 26 people with dogs, which going back 12 months, 18 months ago, you'd have seen half a dozen. So obviously the bins are going to get used more, and hopefully if the bins are full, they take it back. I mean, we even get people now who put an extra bins by the side of it so that it's all cleaned up. Going back to Mr. Truslove, I think we do need to review all the dog bins in the borough and to see what we need. You know, we need some larger ones around by us, unfortunately. But all I can say is I got 100%. I'm happy with Glendale. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Sargent.
Chair. Yeah, another thank you. Over the Christmas period, there was an issue with well, bins and dog bins around Paul's Land, and I did give Dean a ring. It was between Christmas and New Year, and he did get somebody there the same day emptying the bins, which was fantastic. So well done for that. You mentioned about community stuff. We're actually doing something in Attleborough. We've got a little bit of funding, and I wondered if somebody from Glendale could contact me at some point to talk about a sort of a bit of a joint effort, really. That's okay?
Okay.
May I come back on that, Chair?
Yeah, by all means.
Thank you. And thank you very much for your comments. It was remiss of me, actually, that I didn't say that we would welcome suggestions for community-related projects or could support or participate in, and I would be delighted to follow that up. Well, in fact, I'd be delighted to ensure that Barry and Dean would follow that up with you, and we'll look to see what we can do. Thank you.
Yeah. That's brilliant. We have got a little bit of funding already, so you know, we're keen to get something going.
Okay, anybody else wishing to contribute? If not, I'll wind up by saying thanks to everybody again. It's as we keep saying, it's COVID, and it's been pretty hard in order to get things that we want to be done throughout the borough, and I'm going to give plaudits to Glendale as well. There's somebody phoned me up, asked me about a particular problem. I phoned up customer services, as you do, sent an email, etc. And then and it must have been sheer luck this, more than anything else, because I never realised these sort of things happened. About 3/4 of an hour, I got a phone call from the person who was complaining, saying they're actually here and they're doing a job, and she thanked everybody around. So even I was surprised at that. It was it must have been, as a politician, you actually take these sort of things, don't you, and say, you know, thanks. But I did send an email to customer services and thank everybody else for what had happened, and passed on that person's thanks. Councillor Tandy, you've got your hand up.
All I want to do is to move the recommendation at 2.1 of the report, that Scrutiny note the content of both the review, summary and update on the appropriate plan, and make recommendations they consider appropriate to Cabinet.
Well, that's exactly what that's exactly what I was going to do just as soon as I finish speaking, Councillor. So everybody in favour of that, I take? Yeah. I find no hand of objection. Item number 9 then, heart review and improvement plan. Paul or Philip, which one of you are taking this?
It'll be me, Chair. Paul will be ably assisting me, and if any questions in connection with the service. And if I can just say apologies from Jane Grant. Jane was hoping to be here, as the Heart Board representative, but unfortunately he's not been able to make it. Chair, if I can just start by making reference to the agenda and the report that's there, you'll see what you have on shared on the screen is Appendix B, which we'll go through in a moment. But if I can just summarise very quickly that obviously Heart was established as a Warwickshire-wide partnership in 2016. I think negotiations started some years before that. And as a result, and it was very much with the intention to improve outcome for residents across the whole of Warwickshire. As a result, the partnership started in 2016, and initially at least it was ourselves, the County Council, Rugby and North Warwickshire, and then latterly, a year or so later, Stratford, Warwick district councils joined the partnership as well. So it's sort of gradually grown a little bit over time. So it now covers the whole of Warwickshire. And the original plan was for the partnership agreement to run for 5 years. So it's now coming up for its renewal, if you like. Part of the arrangements in the partnership agreement suggested that there needed to be a review partway through to see how the service was bedding down, to identify whether it was working, whether it was achieving its intended outcomes, or whether there needed to be any changes made to the partnership. And as a result of that, you have the report, which is at Appendix A, which is a summary of the report that went to the Heart Board. Obviously, there's a few issues in that report. Obviously, there'll be questions on those. We will, but I have to say now they, as you'll see, they are some of those issues are very historic because we have moved on. The service has moved on leaps and bounds since that report was completed, and in fact, a lot of the issues I can say either have been addressed or are in the process of being addressed. So things are certainly moving in the right direction. Just one last little bit of information before I go to the improvement project summer report. The board are meeting very soon. I think it's on Monday. They are reviewing the arrangements for going forward. There is a proposal that is coming for consideration by the board to extend the partnership for a further 2 years, whilst we see what happens, both in terms of any issues around local government in Warwickshire. Because, of course, as you know, there are still some issues there in terms of whether we go down a unitary route or what. So I think there's some view that we need to tread carefully and not overcommit. The partnership might actually get absorbed into something else, I think is the thinking. So there will be some discussions going on Monday in connection with that. If I can just now just turn to the report, if you like, the PowerPoint presentation, and you'll see, if you can just move it on one slide, please. Thank you. You'll see, Chair, that that those are the partner organisations that are involved in the service, and it is across the whole of Warwickshire. So it's a comprehensive service across them all. If you can go for the next slide, please. Thank you. And those are effectively the sort of, if you like, the broad objectives of the service. So we are looking at a very much a comprehensive service that covers not just what we as a district would have done or a borough council would have done in terms of DFGs, but it is very much linked to what the county council does as the social care body, and in particular how that links with the health service in terms of assisting in discharges from hospital so that people can be discharged sooner rather than later. And in some cases, people can remain in their homes rather than be allocated to a hospital environment or a home environment, so that they can be looked after in their own home. So those are the sort of, if you like, the broad objectives of the service. Can you move on, please, Victoria? Thank you. In terms of how the service has performed, and this to a certain extent leads to some of the issues that were identified in the report. If you look at the numbers roughly that are indicated in 2016 on the chart, you'll see that those were the numbers that were being or were within contemplation when the service was established as a partnership. And you will see that year on year, demand has grown. So we are significantly up on the original demand in terms of what the service is delivering. That has had quite an impact in terms of staffing, morale, and also in terms of backlog. And we'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. But you'll see that obviously there was a drop off in demand at the start of the first lockdown back in March of last year. But by and large, we're roughly about 150% up. At the same time, there has not been a concurrent increase in staffing resources to meet that demand. So that is an issue that is going to be considered by the board on Monday. And I have to say, one of the issues that the board are going to have to get their heads around is that the capacity of the existing staffing complement is not looking as though it will be able to meet all that demand. So the board is going to have to start thinking about coming up with some solutions to that. Can you hit the next slide, please, Victoria? Thank you. That just gives you a flavour of the demand itself and how it's broken down. We do get an awful lot of inquiries where we can just give advice. We are dealing with a significant number of home safety, handy person issues across the service, although specifically located in Warwick, Rugby, and I think North Warwickshire. But those services are being delivered and are making quite a significant improvement in terms of outcomes. And if you can just move on, Victoria, to the next slide. And in terms of the assistance types, though we get key safes is clearly a big one. It's quite a simple one, but it does mean that, for example, carers can get into properties, etc., without necessarily having to bear with getting the person who may have mobility issues having to come and let them in, etc. So they have been very useful. And level access showers are very much an important part of what we're doing, and we will be looking to roll out more of an initiative around level access showers in the coming years. Can you hit the next slide, please, Victoria? This is from the and this is an example that they have used in terms of briefing their OSP members, and it's an example of where the service has had a cross-functional working. So along with social services, the service was involved in looking at making some adaptations to somebody that was in hospital. It was felt that they could not be discharged back into the home environment. It was considered unsafe, and so they were involved as one of the along with social services. Could you just the next slide, please, Victoria? And work
Philip, we're losing you. Hello, Philip.
Yeah.
We're losing you. Plan B, is it?
Can you hear me, Chair?
Yeah, I can hear you now, Philip. Yeah.
Okay. That's good, Chair. Thank you. So, as you can see, there's actually, I think it might be Councillor Hocking whose microphone is not muted.
Councillor Hawken, could you make sure your microphone's off, please? Councillor Hawken? Lydia?
Should I carry on, Chair?
Yes, go on. Yeah.
Okay. So, as you can see, obviously a vast improvement in terms of the environment within the property, and the discharge could go ahead, and the customer could then resume occupation. So, a sort of positive results there. And again, that was an example of partnership working across all of the services, sort of the NHS, the social services at the county council, as well as ourselves. And can we have the next slide, please? Thank you. So the review itself, which took place sort of late 2019, I wasn't involved in the review personally because I wasn't managing the service at the time, but the review identified some issues, and that resulted in early 2020 with an improvement plan. It needed to start looking at how the service was operating. I'll talk a little bit about some of the issues that we're having to address in a moment, but there were some particular issues and some a bit more fundamental in terms of how the service was configured, and are still not resolved, and we're still working on trying to get those issues resolved. And just to give you one very simple example, and it's highlighted in the Appendix A report, we do have a number of employees who are seconded from their parent authority into the service, and they retain their existing terms and conditions of employment. They're dealt with on the basis of the policies that are applicable to their employment back authority, and it does mean that when dealing with issues, rights to leave entitlement, and more particularly in terms of pay, because there is a differential in pay, it does cause problems, not least the fact that you get people hopping between jobs within the service when a job comes up, because you can get an instant pay rise. We are looking to try and harmonise, as it's suggested in the report, the terms and conditions through what we call the HR protocol. At the moment, the HR is not playing ball. It's fundamental to the smooth running of the service, and I think probably goes some way towards explaining why in some parts of the service there have been some morale issues or differences of opinion about how things should be done. If you could move to the next slide, please. So in terms of the issues that were identified, obviously one of the first and probably the most fundamental is the IT system that the service is using. It is based on a system that's used across the council. In fact, the council is replacing that system, but the position as far as this service was concerned was it wanted to hold fire and take a view on what it wanted to do. The board has now made the decision that it will proceed to acquire the housing assistance module, which is part of the Civica CX suite. that the council is purchasing. So the board will be funding that, and we are in the process of instigating delivery of the housing assistance module. We've just set up the project board, and we've been through the procurement exercise, and we're now in the process of just looking at all of the data integrations that need to be in place with all of the other systems that we'll need to integrate, both internally within the council, but also with the county council's Mosaic system, to try and streamline data flows and information flows between the different aspects of the service. In terms of the demand and the need to manage backlog, this is one of the biggest issues to address. There is a new triage process in place to identify, but not just priority cases, but also to then feed into very specific workflows. Our preference is very much to simplify and identify those services that can be delivered very quickly, in particular where a DFG is involved, because the DFG is, if you like, the core business of the service from all the districts and boroughs' perspective. There are wider service elements, as you've seen, which relate to the wider picture, but certainly getting those early interventions in to enable or to avoid bed blocking is seen as a critical part of it. We've undertaken some analysis of customer demand, and we will be reporting on Monday on what we call the rough cut capacity planner. That indicates that's taken the exponential growth in demand for the service, and it has taken the assistance types, it's broken it down, it's worked out effectively how many bodies on the ground and what type of bodies we need in order to be able to meet the demand going forward. And I have to say, it will be an interesting discussion, because it does identify that there will be quite a significant need for additional resources. And just pick up the very last point, that we do have support and assistance from the county council. They've been very helpful through the health and wellbeing board. We've had the services of a business process engineer, for want of a better term, to assist us in terms of looking at business processes and looking at how we report things. And we've recently also had the assistance going forward to the end of April of a process mapping consultant who will be looking at how we map our processes for the integration into the IT system. So there's a fair bit of work going on. Progressing at pace, actually. So we hope that we'll get that into the specification with sooner rather than later. Victoria? We've been having a little bit of a discussion with our colleagues at the County Council in terms of what we call the strength-based approach. The strength-based approach is very much something that social care do and do as part of their general approach. The difficulty with it for us is that it requires us to capture a lot of information in connection with customers and their needs, on the off chance that at some point in the future there might be a need that will present itself. That is an issue that we are still unresolved in terms of the county council, simply because if we wanted to do a DFG, we could do it relatively quickly, but that is holding us up, and that's something which is having a negative impact in terms of our rate of delivery, and something that we are having some discussions about still with the county council. But it is hoped that with the integration with the Mosaic system, with the new CX system, some of that will be addressed, but maybe not entirely. We still need to agree pathways with them, process certain types of service request. Being delivered on the ground. So some work has been undertaken on that. I have to say, when you see them, you won't be able to read them, the slides, but there are some examples of the reports that are now coming to the board, and we've been piloting them since I think since about August, September last year. Victoria. So in terms of leadership and governance, we have now appointed an independent chair. Prior to that, it was the board member was who chaired it was part of the group, and it therefore perhaps lacked that critical independent scrutiny. So we currently have an independent chair from the County Council who has nothing to do with Hart, which I think is very sensible. I'm also now, I suppose, an honorary member of the board. I'm not a board member, but I represent the host and will go to the board to present reports and to account for, amongst other things, the improvement plan that is being delivered along with Paul. But beyond that, I have no involvement with the board, and our representative is Jane, who represents the council on that board. In terms of the setup in terms of communication, some of the issues about morale, as part of the early interventions to look at the improvement plan, we commissioned a staff survey taken called the 3 Qs, and the results were very good. To say they didn't disclose any specific issues in terms of staff morale, in terms of how they were working, other than the fact that they felt like systems and the duplication that they were having to do was problematic for them, because it was holding them back, which is why we've made quite a bit of a play and focused almost quite significantly on the getting the IT system right, and then looking at the processes behind that. Thank you, Victoria. Can we go to the next one? So, as I say, I wouldn't expect you to be able to read these, but these are just to give you a little bit of a flavour of the reports that are now coming. These are what we call Power BI reports. They're generated currently from the Flare system, but they will we will be looking to replicate these into the new CX system. They do give a general view plus an end-to-end view in terms of how the service is performing, and also things like, as you can imagine, because this is across Warwickshire, individual councils want to see what's happening in their area. So there is a breakdown for individual councils in terms of things like how many DFGs have you done, how much have you spent. We get allocation, are we spending it, is it being distributed fairly and reasonably across the whole county? Okay, thanks, Victoria. Next one. And then this is the quad report, as we call it, is largely separated into the most important thing, what's happening in terms of the service, and then you have in the top right quadrant there what we're going to do in the next period. The bottom left is what we've just done, and then in the right hand side are the issues and risks log that you know, anything that's come up that might present a problem. They're going to the board, so that's, if you like, the starting point. Then they will asking questions, and they can drill in the report later on, which are the previous slides. Now, can we have the next slide, please? We commit to do a customer survey, and the customer survey is conducted. We endeavour to achieve a return of 20% in each district. So we're trying to get each district and borough to get a response across the piece to get a flavour of how the service is performing. Obviously, you'll see the latest results for up to December 20 as showing fairly good results in terms of the overall experience at 96%. We do look at those, and we'll be looking at those to establish what the 4%, see if we can improve on that. But as you can imagine, in some cases, part of the issue is around whether or not a contractor has achieved the standard of finish, for example, that the customer was looking for, which can obviously feed into the results. Next one, please, Victoria. And obviously, we do through the service itself, we do have a list of contractors that we procure. We operate it a little bit like a framework, and we use that as the benchmark, if you like. If we can't get agreement with a customer about a particular contractor, we do give them the option to choose their own. But of course, then they take full responsibility for the finished product if that's the case. Next one, please, Victoria. And that's just reprise that we do have quite a detailed analysis of activity within each period, and the board meets every 6 weeks. So the time horizon for each of these reports is usually on a 6-week basis. So, Chair, that I think concludes the what if you like the summary. So, what I would suggest, if members have got any questions, Paul and I will endeavour to answer those. And just an apology to Councillor Kandaka, because I know he's seen this route once already when he was at the County Council. But if there's any questions that we can help you with, we'll endeavour to do so.
Has any members got any questions? Can't see any. Oh, I've got a hand up somewhere. See if I can find Councillor Phillips.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. What started out in 2016, it was classed as a very, very good idea and a very good service. What really concerns me is that over the past 5 years, the requirement for the service has increased, but has stated we've got lower capacity in IT and staff. I'm really concerned about the financial capacity and the resources, and I wonder how if that has been increasing year on year with the extra requirements for the service. And can I have a copy of the presentation, please, Victoria? Because yeah. I think also this is something that will need to come back to internal scrutiny, definitely within the year, considering there's a board meeting Monday. I'd be very interested to see the outcomes of the board results. Yeah, thank you.
I can send the presentation out to all members of the panel this evening after the meeting.
Thank you, Victoria.
Would you like to add anything else, Paul or Philip?
Just to say on the resources front, Chair, I mean, it is a conundrum that is going to have to be dealt with by board, and it may even have to go to the Health and Wellbeing Board. The one thing I would say, and the service does have the capacity to grow its own resources, in that when we do works, we obviously receive the government the Disabled Facilities Grant, and we will charge some time to that in order to deliver DFGs. So the difficulty is it's cracking the nuts, because it's a vicious circle. That's the one that we're asking the board to consider on Monday, is Do you pump prime it by putting some additional resources in now so that we can generate more work and therefore generate more income and so on and so forth? So that's a discussion to be had. So I think Councillor Phillips is absolutely right. I think, you know, we'll have to report back at some point to say, yes, this is the plan. At the moment, I don't know what the board will decide.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay. Thanks for that, Philip and Paul. And once again, more power to your elbows. It's a very good scheme. It's nice to see your local authorities working together for the benefit of others. And I thank you for the report and for the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair.
Item number 10, civic.
I'm just trying to get my camera to work. Thank you, Chair. Hopefully you can see me now. There was a delay there.
You can see you, yeah, full colour.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Chair. Really just to update members following the previous report. This is an update on the Civic Hall delivery. Appreciate that obviously the Civic Hall has been closed for the past 12 months due to the pandemic. We've unfortunately not been able to deliver any entertainment activities to the borough, but have helped in the following areas. And this really just follows up from section 5 of the report, just to give you a summary overview. We helped deliver the food distribution following the Jubilee closure. I think that was detailed previously in the Carver report, when the Jubilee then surveyed on at the Civic Hall and delivered that from the auditorium with the teams. We opened the takeaway service from the coffee bar, reopened as a COVID-safe cafe. We provided space for Warwickshire Fire and Rescue Service to hold their training exams because it was a large area for social distancing for them. We assisted the Bedworth Health Centre with space to hold their flu vaccinations, as members may recall, before Christmas. And then we provided the space for the COVID walk-in test centre for the borough. That ended on the 17th of December because there was a requirement from County and Department of Health and Social Care to have a vaccination site. We then into a vaccination site from the 4th of January, and obviously that current service is undergoing as we currently speak. If I could just draw members' attention to item 5.8 of the report. We did have a visit from Mr. Gilby, the Chief Executive from the CWPT, on the first week of operation at the Civic Hall. And I've just got I've put actually in a copy of his email that he did send to us, just to thank the team at the Civic Hall for all the help that they provided in getting that site up and running. I am aware that we went beyond to get that site up and running. The lessons that we'd learned from the COVID test centre walk-in, and the team at the Civic Hall did absolutely everything and worked many days and evenings to get that ready for the vaccination site. And the team there have just thanked us continuously for their support. But that was really nice to get that positive feedback for the team. The team have obviously also helped the vaccination currently for only what is required. The rest of the team have been redeployed in other areas of the council supporting the brief delivery of the vaccination because CWPT requested that we open that up. I'm aware that we just hire and the facilities for CWPT, so we don't get involved in their operation site that's operational hours. The table Appendix 1 is a summary update of our business improvement plan. Now, what I have done is remove some of the areas from the previous value for money report because it wasn't pertinent, because areas have been addressed. We did start to work on those following the new team restructuring January, but unfortunately we closed the following month. But a number of those areas have been are ready to go, and other measures and risks in terms of booking and hiring. So you will see in Appendix 1 we will do other work at the site to make sure that we are fully ready for high risk to come back. The final area I was just going to highlight in terms of the Ordnance Development Plan Appendix 2, that will come through the new software Pro Venue that we've now installed, trained our staff, and that will deliver our Ordnance Development Plan. And the final section in terms of finance, as with many entertainment sites that have had to be forced to close and created a spend pressure with partners and some of the services that I've mentioned earlier, we have had licenses in place, Chair, and that has enabled obviously income generation and also offset costs that we would have had if it was closed. We've had users throughout the biggest biggest utility of the year. So we had the COVID walk-in test centre, and now we've got the vaccination delivery that will be covering the utilities and will be covering high charges as per the licences to enable us to generate income. And as you can see, the predicted spend pressure, an overall spend pressure of 87, and that's we have yet to analyse the accounts for year end. So I think that's been really due to the venue being hired and booked out. That summarises my report really, Chair, and I'll try and answer any questions or queries that members have. Thank you.
Okay. Any questions for? Yeah.
Thanks, Chair. Kevin, first of all, I welcome the report, but being as I wear glasses and my eyesight isn't as good as it should be, I had to ask for an extra copy, a larger print copy, because the copy that I received, I couldn't read, basically, not even with my magnifying glass. So that's it. But I have a question. The additional box office presence that you're going to move into the town hall, can you tell me what that will entail, please?
I can do, Chair. Councillor Gushes. First of all, I apologise. We'll address that for any future reports. So the board and so
that's a light as well.
The box office, what we have done, Councillor Gutches, is previously the old system that we had for promoting and advertising tickets had to be delivered from the actual box office at the Civic Hall. The new software that we have now got enables us to deliver that out in the community. So on the basis that we put in place the closure of the Civic Hall on Mondays, previously that was open because we had the box office, there is no longer required to open the Civic Hall just for the box office. We will be looking to deliver that from the town hall to enable residents of Nuneaton to be able to walk into the town hall and book, and through the Pro Venue system to be able to book and schedule tickets for performances at the Civic Hall. And we feel that's just more taking the opportunities from the Civic Hall out into the community and better PR and promotional of us going forward.
So can I come back?
Yes, by all means. Go on, sir.
So you will have a member of staff in the council house on a Monday then, with your proposed box office then, when we start going again?
Councillor Gutches, what we're looking to do is use the existing box office team, but one of those would be out with the Pro Venue system, taking the bookings. We will then look to see how we can develop that software going forward. But yes, we would be looking to have a resource in the town hall to be able to start marketing that from there.
This is probably not the time to ask, but I will ask. Opened in 1973. What sort of condition is it? Have we got to spend a lot of money now, or when we come back after the pandemic, to bring it up to scratch, or is there any plans for revamping it? Because I see in 2004 we had a major refit at 1.4 million.
Councillor Gush is a little bit before my time. I can answer a couple of those questions. The relatively require. We haven't done that last year, obviously for the pandemic reasons, and we will consider what we can get done in this summer, ready for the facility being opened. As you quite rightly say, the building was built in the early 70s, and I think unfortunately you probably can't see that because of the size of the print. Talk about there or not. Sure, we can consider what is required, not only for the Civic Hall, but obviously other facilities of the borough, and that work we will be looking to move forward with to give us a foundation of where the Civic Hall fits in its future. They're very promising in Bedworth, and yes, buildings of that age do require ongoing maintenance and support and equipment that becomes obsolete to be replaced, but that is in with our capital programme. Our principal building surveyor has that programme along with other council buildings. Councillor Guttridge.
I also lived not far from the chief executive at the time, a guy called Brian Walters, who came from Open Gates, and his widow still lives in the existing house. And he was the instigator of the Civic Hall because they built one similar at Open Gates. So I have got a little bit of history on the Civic Hall. But going back to the Civic Hall, about the COVID jab, I went and had the jab there, and I must say it was very professionally done. I talked to the nurses because I am not very keen on needles. They were a little upset about the press and the Facebook pages saying that they were closed 1 week. Well, I believe they have to close 1 day for a deep clean, but the other times they've been closed, they've gone out into the community to give the jab to the housebound people. And I do wish people would ask a bit more and get the facts right. Enough of my ranting, but I'm very impressed with the Civic Hall with the jab. Thank you.
Anybody else from the panel want to answer, Kevin? No. In that case, I'll sum it up, and thank you for the report, Kevin. And I had the flu jab at the Civic Hall, and I had the COVID jab just a couple of 3 weeks ago at the Civic Hall, and on both occasions I found them very, very easy to deal with. There was plenty of space, and the nurses were quite happy. I had a word with 2 or 3 of them, and they were, well, from a distance, of course. And of course, you got 15 minutes. You got to wait until you go out into the fresh air. So I was impressed with everything was there, and they were quite happy with what was happening as well. But the last question I would like to ask, I really don't know whether you could answer, but perhaps you can. There's people tell me, we listen to the radio, etc., that there's a pent-up demand for live shows and for people actually to get out back into theatres. Now, as you probably see behind me, as I try to be a champion for the Civic Hall, is that every time there seems to be some sort of show going on, there's a revised date. Is that diary keep ticking on, or is there? I'm going to say, is there any gaps that could be filled in, or is it just an ongoing cycle that we can look forward to different things next year? Oh, when everything's back to the new normal.
Dates. So we've got a list of bookings that were originally booked there for 2020. We've rescheduled those initially for the first 3 months when we didn't know how long COVID was going to be, and then again 6 months. And some of those have been done for the third and fourth time. The team have been keeping in contact with the shows. Do get inquiries about dates and venues, and obviously some of the bookings that you're talking about are booked 2 years in advance. I think we need obviously the lockdown restrictions come back in June, subject to obviously the numbers, and we're taking those inquiries now and working with hirers and I think it's just we need to just take that very slowly and see how the confidence is in terms of people coming back, and people have had their vaccinations to come back into auditoriums. But we are continuing taking bookings and inquiries, and we're dealing with that. We've got those contact details when we can open. But I do believe there will be a real requirement for venues and that can house that capacity for shows and theatres and audience, etc.
Well, I sincerely hope that happens. That, as you say, that pent-up demand. I have actually got an appointment for my second jab on the 30th of this month. So it's I shall be using the Civic Hall again once again. So thanks for the report, Kevin. You've heard the plaudits that we've had, and it's pleasing to me that the Civic Halls, as usual, has been at the centre of what's happening in the community. And thank all the staff and thank everybody else for all the good work that they've done. And all power to the Civic Hall. Thanks,
Thank
Kevin.
you very much, Chair. Thank you.
Yeah. Right, next item. Catherine. I remember this name.
Good evening, Chair, and everyone at the meeting. I won't go through the papers that you've already had from me in any great detail. They were prepared quite early, so I do have some additional information for you all that will hopefully be of value. I highlighted in the report that we'd increased our digital audiences over the last 12 months, and I just wanted to flag up that upwards trend has continued in both January and February, with us doubling the numbers for engagement through our digital means, doubled it on last year. So I think we're doing really well to sustain that growth. And of course, the challenge will be, once we're open, is how do we then balance the needs of our digital audience with those who prefer to experience us face to face, shall we say. I wanted also to flag up, we've said in the report that our shop on Art UK would be opening on March the 1st. It is indeed open. There are 62 different images available, which people can either pay to print on demand and get framed so they can have them in their own home, or that can be available for licensing for illustrations in books or on other products. We'll receive quarterly reports concerning those sales, so I imagine that I will be able to report to you back later in the year about how that's fared for us. Just this week, we've digitised some more images, so we are hoping to expand the number of images available for people to buy or license through that website. I just also wanted to flag up on the Exploring Eliot. I talked about the choir which we had piloted just before Christmas. I'm happy to say that choir is now taking place digitally on Wednesday lunchtimes. Attendances have been between 20 and 16 people, depending on what people have got on. It's been great to hear the feedback. People have said at the end of the session how it's cheered them up, how it's made them feel better. The sessions don't just incorporate singing, they incorporate breathing exercises to help people with any stress or fears that they may have. And we've had emails thanking us for being able to participate in that. Participants have also said they've really enjoyed the being able to do something with other people, even if it's only online at this moment. The storytelling project, which will be done with professional performer Nick Kassenbaum, is also moving forward, and we'll be beginning recruiting young people to that soon. We're hoping that through using performance and storytelling techniques online, we can increase the confidence of young people and provide them with skills for the future. We're also starting to develop a school session, and in line with a lot of cultural organisations, we're grappling with whether it be ultimately delivered on site at the museum or digitally remotely. We're planning both of those two options into that so that we can be flexible moving forward. As already stated in the report, the joint website is going ahead for the Exploring Eliot project. Just to remind you all, the Exploring Eliot project is a partnership project with a lead on. We're doing it with the Herbert at Coventry and with Nuneaton Library. We're hoping that joint website will be up and running for City of Culture, which is now beginning in May 2020-21 in a very digital way. We're also hoping to complete some kind of trail for that period as well, so that when visitors start to come to Coventry, it's expected to be closer to September now, that trail will be there and will hopefully create foot traffic and road traffic between Coventry and Nuneaton, and get people to see all of that Eliot material whilst they're here enjoying the other cultural offerings. COVID collecting was a particular discussion point at the last meeting I attended back in October, and I wanted to share the fact that we have made progress in this area, and we reported on some of that recently on our blog. Recent objects that we've added have been a home test kit, various medical letters people have received, some WI magazines that were particularly related to COVID issues that local members had received, and an invitation to the VE Day celebrations, which were socially distanced last year. So there's just a few of the offerings that have come to us. Clearly, what we're looking forward to next is hopefully, if the government roadmap all goes to plan, to be seeing people in person. We're making preparations for the cafe to open on April the 12th, doing takeaway, and hopefully that will be a big boon to our parks users, who will maybe appreciate the chance to get a cup of tea while they're getting that valuable exercise. And also we're hoping then to be able to reopen on May the 17th. At the moment, we are still planning that it will be fairly strict social distancing with additional safety measures, and we will follow the government guidance really closely to see at what point those can be relaxed. We know from doing our survey last time, and we're hoping to repeat it this time, that many of our visitors really took their safety seriously, as you would expect. And so I think the relaxing of those measures will be both in line with government guidance, but also at the speed with which our local residents are comfortable. You know, some people won't venture out straight away, and we just really want them to feel safe and secure and happy, as I'm sure you all do. So that's all I need to say. So it's questions, I suppose.
Any questions? Councillor Condegor?
Thank you very much, Chair. I really love our museum, and it was probably December 2019 it was when I had a last proper go in the museum when you did one of your marvellous George Eliot talks. I don't know how much of that sort of stuff you can do outdoors during the summer, because like your Friday lunchtime talks and things, yeah, they're quite crowded in the gallery, and it might be nice to do some stuff outside. And I'm also really excited about the George Eliot Centre at Griff getting its funding and getting go ahead, I hope, as part of the various recovery things. And it'd be nice to sort of link the museum more with that and have a very prosperous. When the pandemic was 100 years ago, in the 1919s and whatever, we then had the roaring 60s and the roaring 20s, and quite a time of and so I hope we can recover, and not just recover, but actually have a real celebration of Nuneaton and Bedworth and the history. So it'd be great to see what events you can put on. Thank you, Chair.
Okay.
Councillor. Sorry, I did everything else. I was just saying, initially, we're definitely looking to take our storytelling outside. In terms of the lunchtime talks, we sort of don't normally do those in the summer, and I think we're looking at a variety of options for the autumn, taking in point your social distancing and indeed the fact that the talks are often very oversubscribed. I think we'll probably do a little bit of a survey to check in with people what they're like, because I'm aware that of the sort of noise issues we've had when we've done storytelling outside. So I think we might look to be, can we offer them digitally at the same time as we're doing them, to give people those options, because we're aware that some people can now participate with the museum who for various disability or illness reasons can't participate on a regular basis. The other thing is whether we look at sort of a double sitting for talks and whether we do them twice in a day. So I think we'll look at all of those options and try and maybe experiment with some of them to get the best and the most optimum result for our communities.
Okay, Catherine. Councillor Evans.
Thank you, Chair. I visited the museum actually in September 2020, so it was the last week of September, and I have to say I was very pleased with how the staff have set up the museum in a COVID secure way, and how I was welcomed to the museum. So it's great that our staff are still providing a fantastic service even in the middle of a global pandemic. Just one question in respect to the cafe. Have we considered signing the cafe up to Uber or Just Eat to expand our income? Thank you.
Okay. The cafe is operated by a private operator who operates on a lease from the council. So I would certainly be happy to pass that on to him, but that would be very much his decision rather than ours or the council's at this point.
Okay. Any other questions? Anna? No? Thank you, Catherine, for your report then. And I'm pleased to say that you've managed to go through the pandemic and come back through the other end, hopefully a bit more positive than what we were before. I mean, people are wanting to get out, and I sincerely hope one of the places that they go and visit will be the museum, which a bit of interaction with a couple of years ago with the mining exhibition, etc. And it was nice to meet some old colliers, shall we say, and to talk about various bits and bobs. So thanks for that, Catherine, and
thank you.
We'll move on to the next report. Glenn, are you taking this one?
Yes, Chair, it's me presenting this report.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, everybody. Could I just look to start at slide 3, please, which gives an overall total household waste tonnage for the periods of 2018-19 up to 2021. This is a snapshot of how waste has increased over these periods, especially for last year, and in these increases identifies how challenging the waste service was, especially following the start of the pandemic, and that theme runs through this performance report. What I'd also like to say, just before I get into the meat of the report, is that it's still very in its infancy stage, and we are more than happy to take on any suggestions for amendments or inclusions into the report hereafter. Certainly on slide 4, this identifies the pandemic impact on the waste services and what we had to do to keep all services running, which I think in the circumstances we did very well. Notwithstanding more people being at home, generating more waste, businesses closing, and more sort of deliveries being identified into the home. You can see there in sort of some of the figures that we had. The main body of recycling bin combined had a 27% increase in the type of waste and the amount of waste that we were being asked to collect. This had an overall impact in not only resources that we needed to apply to the waste service, but also the sort of the levels of funding that needed to be applied. And luckily, we had that some reimbursement from the government recently to offset some of those costs. Slide 5. This is just a sort of an indicator from last year to this year, how those increases manifested. And as you can see, there's a consistent theme running through all of the slides you will see this evening for a sustained increase in waste that we collect and at curbside. Slide number 6 is the commingled, which is the main body of the bin, which is the DMR, the plastics, the glass, etc. And the second table is the comparison with 1920 for the paper and card that we were collecting. And again, the theme is very much that we've been collecting slightly more each month for that. The slide number 7 the top table that we collected, which again identifies the amount of recycling material that was collected compared to the same time last year in 2019. The bottom one is a particular interest because this is the amount of contaminant that went into the bins, which would have been rejected at the material processing, and which we have to deal with ourselves by way of disposal and or cost. Anything above the 10% threshold that we included into the contract that we are currently have with HW Martin. Slide number 8 is the green waste sign-up figures for the inception of the service, running through last year and into early part of this year. We were very encouraged by the uptake of the service this year. Certainly the initial sign-up, which if you can see the December comparison, we had 2.5, nearly 3,000 more sign-ups quicker in December than in any other period last year. And currently we're around 76% of uptake for the properties that are able to accept the service, which is very encouraging and brought in a significant amount of income into the council last year, and it's continued to do so. The number of properties so far signed up is 19,811, which at the moment signposts an income of £826,000 to the council. Unfortunately, due to the increase in material that has manifested in the recycling collection service, this had a significant impact on shares and income returns for the on sale of our material. And as you can see, each material has shown a net reduction in the prices that we realise from the on sale, again, which has an impact on the income that we get in for the service. And also the contamination element also means we have another budget pressure that we have to contend with, which has increased again in the pandemic from approximately 8% of our material to between 14 and 20% during full lockdown. On slide number 10, this cleansing slide seeks to show the panel that my first presentation last year said that we were looking into this. This has now been implemented. This is a street cleansing tool based on the old NI 195 that some of you may be familiar with. We've used the broad principles of that because we felt it was a very good base mark and a barometer to use for our cleansing monitoring. The indices of multiple deprivation to ensure that we get a broad brush approach to our monitoring and our response to where our resources need to be deployed most effectively. It will hopefully feed into the next report that's presented to the panel, where we will be able to present more accurate street cleansing waste collection figures, and where we can identify where some of the more needy regions are and locations where we can concentrate on. As you can see from the slide number 11, this is our clinical waste collection. These figures have prompted the need for a review, which unfortunately was just suspended last year because of the nature of the collections and the requirements for compliance with government guidance. But it does show an increase in the use of the service, and the review that needs to be undertaken is, are all of these users on there because of clinical need, or it just means that they're not aware of the waste stream that they should be using for their material. So this will be undertaken into this year, and hopefully we can get the figure. The number of collections that we have weekly is around approximately 200 to 210. We hope to get that down significantly, which we will hopefully reduce not only our fuel bill but also our carbon footprint when we can reduce this. Similarly, the bulky collection service, although we had a suspension of the service during full lockdown, we did reinstate. When we reinstated the service, we increased the number of vehicles and resource to try to get back to bring the backlog back, and to accommodate any additional requests, because we felt that this service was significant in maintaining the waste collection from households that may ordinarily have been originating in down a lane somewhere. That if we could stop that, then that would be, you know, an added benefit to us. Slide number 13. This is a fly tipping overview of where we are with our new dash system that we are taking the data from now. I think at the last OSP, the recommendation was made that we tried to get the ward data that we you know, in a collectible format, which would be valuable information to elected members and residents alike, as to a snapshot of what's happening in any particular ward. You will see the data underneath. This is, at the moment, this is mainly due to the top table is the data that we get through Dash that the customers report through. The bottom one, we get notifications of fly tips from yourselves, elected members, residents, even you know, our own staff that have reported these incidents. So at the moment, they're not all being fed through the Dash system, which we're working hard to try to alleviate. What I would say is that when we come onto the innovation slide in a few moments, what we've done with bulkies and fly tipping responses is we've made those electronic to be able to limit the number of paper that we need and the bureaucracy that went around with that, but also it enables us to tightly target collections in an area to save the vehicles travelling sort of long distances individually. We can target these, and these automatically go to the crews to identify on any given day where their most economical collection is, and we do try to make sure that we are collecting fly tips within certainly 3 to 4 days. Some obviously need investigation, which I'll come on to enforcement in a few moments, but generally speaking, we do like to get the fly tips removed as soon as we possibly can. So on to slide 14, which is enforcement, which has been a key element to our strategy to keep waste offences down, and by definition try to keep as much waste being channeled through the appropriate ways of collecting. We have, in terms of, I would just like to say apologies that we seem to have booked the trend with our fly tip incidents compared to other authorities, because although we have seen some spikes in 2020, consistently we didn't see that overt increase in fly tip incidents, and we think that may have been one to do with the amount of enforcement that we've promoted and acted upon, but also the people weren't out there maybe you know, in the remote areas reporting some of the fly tips that may have been there that would have been reported ordinarily. So the top table of number of fines issued for fly tipping, these are the fly tipping incidents, illegal duty disposal of waste. In 2021, from the last lockdown from Christmas onwards, we issued 37 specific fly tipping fixed penalties to waste that was evidential material inside. This is all these fixed penalties are based on generally based on an admission of guilt at a roadside or a doorstep PACE interview. And all of the interviews that are done are in compliance with 3GS's COVID safeguarding practices and the government guidelines. The second table below the fly tipping one, this identifies the number of littering offences that were given, residents and visitors were given fixed penalties for. In 2019, this was a figure of 828, and last year saw a reduction to 700. This was partly due to the midway through the year with the lockdown happened, and the enforcement officers could not undertake that element of enforcement, so patrolling was suspended. And again, the figures for 2021, the patrolling has not restarted at the moment, and obviously we're working with 3GS to see as soon as the guidance is lifted or eased, we can get the patrolling up and running again, and we could start tackling some of the littering issues that may be faced or reported. To supplement the work that we're doing with 3GS, we have installed some of our smart cameras that we purchased at some specific hotspot areas in the borough. For obvious reasons, I don't want to sort of name those locations. However, these are installed on a sort of a needs basis and following an assessment, not only for proportionality and installed notification signage in compliance with the RIPA regulations for proportionality, and any areas that members feel in their ward that they may need to concentrate on, we would be happy to take the locations and do the due diligence that we need to do, and get the cameras installed. I would say that we have 5 cameras at the moment. 3 are cloud data based, where we get those automatically through into our CCTV centre, and 2 are a memory card format. So we haven't got loads of cameras, but we are compiling a list of areas where we need these cameras to be installed. And since they've been installed in these locations, not surprisingly, we haven't seen any offences. And I think our sort of thinking behind this is that if we can hit as many locations as we can, it may well force residents and visitors to think, is it worth the risk of potentially getting caught? Because on all of our enforcement activity, for every fixed penalty that we issue and gets paid, and we had approximately a 75 to 80% payment success rate on these offences. People talk to family members, people talk to their neighbours, people talk on social media, and we're gradually building up a profile in Nuneaton of, we're not going to accept these crimes, and we will target and actively seek out suspects and offenders. Sorry, Councillor, Chair.
No, I just said good.
Oh, sorry. Okay. And what we've been asked to do as an authority is lead on a Warwickshire response to enforcement, because the amount of issues and problems that other authorities are experiencing now with fly tipping, littering, and that type of activity, we are sort of more at the fore of this, and where all of our neighbours want to be. So there will be a meeting set up for all Warwickshire councils, officers, and interested parties to lead on that. Again, the slide 16 is just an overview of the innovation that we've started, which may or may not have been finished. In-cab technology, the bin rerouting, increase in the amount of health and safety monitoring that we do electronically, which now feeds directly into HASCOG. And again, it's identified there the fly tipping dash process that we are still working on introducing. And slide 17 is just a basic overview of some interesting facts, and the footnote there outlines that we are undertaking lateral flow testing at Gresham Road for our staff, again as belt and braces to make sure that we can make sure that we maintain the services that we've managed to run all through last year and into this year, and that concludes the report, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Glenn. Any questions from the panel? Councillor Condicor.
Thank you very much, Chair. A couple of areas. One I warned Glenn about earlier by email. I don't know if you got my email, and I won't talk about the detail of it.
Yeah.
But there does seem to be an issue with issuing these fixed penalty notices by doing a doorstep interview. One of my residents has an issue with one of these fixed penalty notices, and looking at the notice, it is totally unclear what happened. It is totally unclear that the officer that has decided to issue him a ticket as a result of a doorstep chat. You know, the guy said, this guy came and chatted to me, and then I found out I had a ticket. And I don't know if that's true or not, but I don't know what the evidential base is when we do these doorstep interviews. And I don't know if G3GS are getting paid for every one of these tickets issued, or only ones that aren't contested. And the problem that the chap has told me is he has no way of knowing how to contest it other than going to 3GS, which obviously is a bit of a thing of them policing their own complaint system. I'd far rather if someone wasn't happy with being issued a ticket, that it actually went to the council to see if it was a valid ticket. So that's what, if I may.
Okay, Glenn.
Yeah. Yes, certainly respond. Yeah. The doorstep interview is a valid PACE interview under Section C of the Code of Practice. Suspects are read their rights before the interview takes place, which means that it's evidentially sound for future use in prosecutions should that need to be. And any sort of issues that are flagged up that can't be resolved by 3GS, I tend to get anyway, or myself and the team. So they are looked at, through through the council process. But these really are few and far between, councillor, and the service that we've instigated is generally well received. But like any service, there may well be some anomalies that we need to look at.
Thank you. Go on, Tyler.
Yeah, I hope you'll take a look at this case and just tell me, obviously, because I don't want to go into details in a public meeting, what happened, and things about that. The other couple of things is I repeatedly have issues with dustbin lorries parking on pavements. We have a very large 1970s built estate. The tarmac on the pavement is 1 inch to 1.5 inches thick, below which are the water pipes that serve St Nicholas Park. And when the bin lorries, be it your bin lorries or ones from Coventry City Council, park up and have their butties outside the co-op, if they park on the pavement, they are slowly weakening the water mains. And we had a large part of the estate off service about 1.5 years, 2 years ago. So how do I, without going around letting the tyres down, get to your drivers to tell them not to park on these pavements? They're not designed for the weight of a bin lorry. And bin lorries, the bin men work really, really hard. I noticed in the summertime them really flaked out in the absolutely nothing against them.
Councillor, every complaint that we have for this activity, whether it be our own, it is relayed back. It is made a priority, and we have said that we will be issuing improvement notices and or taking more formal action should this be the case. The problem being that a 26-ton bin lorry parked on the road unfortunately also causes sightline issues for other road users, and therefore it is a little difficult in some areas where there's a high congregation of vehicles that utilise one set of shops, but believe me, it is it is taken seriously, and the crews have been updated several times on this matter, and we have said that formal action will be taken if it continues.
If I may, Chair, finally, on a more positive note, can you thank your staff who help people with community litter picks? I know we haven't managed to do community litter picks as such, but your staff have actually gone out and lent people litter picking equipment, and where residents have done litter picking, help collect some. And I'm really, really grateful that the council is very keen on this. And I hope after the elections, the next municipal year, we can actually do really, really big litter picks, because we've got a massive litter problem. And one thing, I mean, people contact me about it, is actually a bulk buy on litter pickers or something. I mean, we buy them at sort of £9-10 as councillors on eBay or whatever, but I'm sure the council can buy them at sort of £6 per each if you're buying them at 50s and 60s. So I think actually, obviously it's difficult in election period because everyone's litter picking and having photographs taken, and it's a silly time of year. But once we're over the elections and actually people can also be out of the COVID restrictions, can we really try and make this a summer of litter picking and clearing our borough up, and have a look at bulk buying or helping someone else bulk buy and get the equipment? Thank you, Chair.
Absolutely.
Okay, take that into consideration. Councillor Guttridge.
Thank you, Chair. I welcome this report. What a wonderful report. The first one I've seen for many times in colour. It's a clear, concise report, bullet points. It was a pleasure to read this report, I must say, and I've read it 5 or 6 times. I can't thank Glenn for doing it like this. It was a wonderful report. Also, I'm full of praises tonight. I had an instance where somebody had fly tipped a settee. So resident got on to me, so I rang Glenn. Glenn said, yeah, okay, we'll get it. I went out, came back an hour later, went past, and it had gone. And they picked it up within an hour. And I still cannot thank the bin men enough. We often have either the big lorries or the small lorries. If they drop a little bit of paper, the lads pick it up. And I cannot thank his staff enough. They've been through the pandemic, and I think they're a credit to the borough. And we ought to say thank you very much to the staff, because they do a wonderful job in all weathers. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Sargent.
Yeah, and I'm going to sort of reiterate the same message. Thank you to all of Glenn's team. The bin men have, struggled through. I know some of them have been redeployed, and other people have been redeployed on the bin trucks. And there was a noticeable sort of problem with emptying the litter bins, which was picked up and fed back to me. So I could feed back to residents that there was some issues that have been resolved. So it was all good communication back, so we could get back to residents and say, these are the issues, but it's going to be resolved, which it was. And the same as Councillor Guttridge says about fly tipping. I reported some yesterday, I think it was, on the system. This morning it's gone. So you can't fault that. Just again, pass on my thanks to everybody for a job well done. Thank you.
Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, will do.
Thank you. I'm just adding to the praise pile on fantastic support with litter picks and absolutely any issues. So thank you. That's it.
Okay, Councillor Sandy.
I suppose that's exactly what I'm going to do as well, except that the one thing that I do want to say is that I do get cross when I hear people, unlike this evening, constantly moaning about the fact that there's, my bin's not been collected today, despite the fact that it's always emptied normally the next day if there's been a problem, and I accept there's been a problem with COVID. But I just think our refuse collectors have done an absolutely fantastic job. And with having they're not having the usual amount of members in their team because of COVID, and they've still been out there and they have worked so very hard. So I do get cross when people don't take into consideration exactly the sort of difficulties that have been going on, almost for the last year, I suspect. So like you say, I speak to Glenn on many occasions, and the work has always been done. But the one thing I do want to also say is about, and I know it was covered in the report, about the collection of the medical stuff, because my son is a type 2 diabetic, therefore has type 1 diabetic, sorry, so has to have injections 3 times a day, and the service that I get is second to none. They come around on a regular basis and collect those needles and stuff. And I just think we get a fantastic service, and I do get cross when people criticise it. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks. Not in the report with all the thanks, Glenn. This is one of the very few times I think you'll be able to get plaudits from everybody. It's pleasing to see about the cameras for the fly tipping. I've had a wee bit of examples of that in the past. So an overwhelming good report, and let's see what happens on the other side, as they say, when we get the new normal. Thanks, Glenn.
Absolutely. Thank you, Chair, and thank you to everybody. Thank you very much.
Okay, cheers.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Philip, entry performance report.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Obviously, as you say, it's been a very odd time in terms of the pandemic. So I'm not going to go through the report in detail. What I suggest, Chair, is if members have any questions, I will either, if I can, I will endeavour to answer it. If not, I will take the question away and I will arrange for an answer to be sent through to all members of the panel.
Okay. Anybody got any particular concerns? Councillor Condacor?
It has been a very strange year. Now we're doing these very large projects, such as transforming the Nuneaton and the town centre stuff, etc., and with the accountable body for those, or some of those works. Is there going to be a new risk register for those, or is it a separate project, or does it go on a strategic risk register? How is it all going to be sort of scrutinised? Because we do need, as councillors, to be actually seeing that the money, the project's going to budget and to time. And if they're just lumped in this performance report as part of our capital programme, they'll just be lost in the noise. And is there a performance criteria going to be set up for transforming the Nuneaton and the town centres fund separately for a separate report to us, or is it going to be more items on our risk register and our normal reports? Thank you, Chair.
Chair, I'll need to defer to Dawn to ask her to get the specific answer to that. But what I would expect, what we would normally do, is that there would be a project risk register for the individual project. So I would imagine for the Towns Board, for example, that they would have a risk register that they would be monitoring as part of their activities, and similarly, Transforming Nuneaton, they would be doing the same. But I'll take that away, Chair, and I will endeavour to get an answer to that question.
Thank you.
Yeah, just a follow up. I think the hotel project, because it's so expensive, does need to go somewhere through the scrutiny process, probably from now that we've started to sign contracts. So can I move that we add it to the performance system somewhere, just so we've got a track of it, either in the risk register or in the performance data?
I'm sure that'll come up in the normal way of things, councillor, surely.
I've made a note of it, Chair, so I'll ask that question just to get an answer.
Councillor Evans.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, I think I've said this now at every internal OSP for the last 2-3 years on the integrated performance reports. 123 satisfaction with council promoted shows. I just don't understand why we keep having this data coming to us. I mean, how on earth does the council expect to get a 95% satisfaction with council promoted shows if we're not holding any promoted shows for this quarter for this year? The target is irrelevant. The data is irrelevant because at best we get 1 or 2 responses. So, my question is, why do we keep getting this when it's just so irrelevant?
I'm guessing, Chair, that it's probably because the panel requested it. That would be my guess, but to be honest, I don't know. And you're quite right. I mean, there's not a lot of point reporting on something when it's not happening.
It's just I don't quite understand how you can measure something if you're getting 1 or 2 responses and you can't measure it if you're not going to hold any shows.
Could we try and find an answer for that, Philip?
Yes.
There's something just not quite right, is there?
Well, the answer is you can't measure it, so you can't include it.
Yes, I understand that, Councillor.
I'll ask. I mean, obviously that's Kevin's issue, so I'll take that to Kevin and I'll ask him to provide a response.
Okay. Any other panel members? No. So thank you for the report, then, Philip.
Thank you.
And move on to basically item number 14, the internal overview and scrutiny annual report. I felt that it was a good idea for the last meeting of the year for us actually to see the work that's been done by the panel. And I thought this would be the easiest and simplest way in order to deal with it over there, to show in a snapshot what happens over the year. Councillor Evans?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I would like to speak about this item because it's basically a sum up of what we've done as a committee over the last 12 months.
That's what I said, yeah.
Yeah, no, don't dispute that. So I've been contacted by a local resident, Mr. Sam Margrave, who has requested to speak at this evening's panel. And unfortunately, for whatever reason, the council has decided not to allow him to speak. So I thought I'll exercise my right and put Mr. Margrave's statement on, well, to the committee on his behalf. So Mr. Margrave's statement is as follows. Over the last few years, changes to the Overview and Scrutiny Committee system has saved a few £1,000s, but at what cost to democracy or attention to issues that matters to residents? And will you reintroduce a committee system or more diverse Overview and Scrutiny committees to properly hold to account the executive and get the best for local residents by discussing issues such as health, housing, council services, or other focused work the old OSP or committee system delivered? Would you be able to provide a response to Mr. Margrave's statement, please?
Yes, there is no intention of revisiting the committee setup, and I think central government actually agrees with that as well, because they prefer this side of the cabinet style of government. So I can't see where he's going to go with anything he's got to say. But thanks for reading out his statement.
If I can just ask a follow up, I think what Mr. Margrave is trying to get from you as chair is, do you believe that the current scrutiny system in the council works? I mean, we have a situation where the internal OSP covers 49 separate different policy areas within the council, and the external overview and scrutiny panel covers a mere 7 policy areas. Do you think the system is working when we're trying to compress all of these items into 3 hours? Are we actually effectively scrutinising council services in this council?
Well, in that case, Councillor, I'm glad you can read Mr. Margrave's mind. So I'm sure that the answer is still the same. This is the current system that's been set up, and this is the current system that we've got to abide by. So saying that, we'll move on to the last week forward plan is for Nuneaton, and item number 16, the work schedule. Please put as many items in for the work schedule for the next year, and I hope that that whatever happens is that it's a well-informed panel that is going to be. And lastly, as to say that if there's any other business, I'm going to be rather cheeky. We've only got a couple of minutes left, but this will be the last meeting I actually chair, because I'm standing down, as people will know, from health reasons. Currently, I am the longest serving councillor in the borough, 84 to 2006 representing Bedworth East, 2008 to current Poplar Ward. And I'd like to thank all the officers and councillors I've had dealings with all those years, and in particular the people who have elected me. It was a great honour to represent you. Councillor Tandy, very, very quickly, we've only got a couple of minutes left. Hello?
Sorry,
Hello?
Chair. Yes, Chair. Sorry, I would just like to ask, bearing in mind the comments that you have just made, that we could please have it written in the minutes. Our thanks to you for the years that you have been within this Borough Council and for the way you have chaired this committee, this overview and scrutiny panel. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thank you. Has that got a second? Somebody say yes, please.
Seconded.
Okay, thanks.
Pleasure.
Saying that, I've enjoyed the to and fro politics over the years, and I wish everybody well. And saying that, Victoria, could you switch off the live stream, please?